Hey, Sir Fix-a-Lot here. I'm going to show you how to change the lower control arms as well as the steering tie rod ends on a 2004 BMW 330i. This is for the E46. These particular A-arms are the Sport A-arms. They will work, I think, on all 2001 or maybe it's 2002 all the way through 2005. The earlier ones are very similar, so except for that point right there is a little bit different, but you should be able to work this on the earlier E46s as well as the E36 the years prior. So the Sport arms are a little bit different than the standard arms. So you got to make sure that you order the right ones if you have the Sport model, or if you don't have the Sport model, make sure you order the right ones again. The arms themselves, what happens is the joints here tend to go out, and you kind of get this clunking noise when you hit the brake repeatedly. You'll hear a clunk, clunk, clunk like that, and that's typically where the strut meets the, well, actually it's out here, the strut meets the ball joint that's down here, and it tends to move around and give you vibration. It also doesn't help the car track well, and the alignment kind of goes off also. So these are some of the things that you want to look at when you're buying a used BMW or when you're maintaining your car. These are lower control arm bushings. They have a detent on one side and then not on the other. So the detent is for, there's an interface on the frame. You'll see it when you pull these off. They go back up onto here, and then these kind of slide onto here. I'll show you how to do that with some soapy water or some silicone spray. But you want to replace these lower control arm bushings every 60 to 65,000 miles. What happens is if these wear out, when your car hits a groove in the freeway or something like that, the car will wander off. So you want to replace these every 60 to 65,000, and you want to replace the complete set here at about 120,000. So these get changed at about 120K. So when you do these, you do another set of those, and then I recommend doing the complete tie rods. You can order these on eBay. All these things were ordered on eBay through Deutsche Parts. They get these from Hamburg Technique. It's an aftermarket parts supplier, but you know, it's a pretty reasonable price. And these steering tie rods you replace complete. It has the inner and the outer. It also comes with the boots. So it's a simple change. You just want to make sure that when you remove your old ones that you keep basically the same dimension, so that your steering is not that far off before you take it over to the alignment shop. And I'll show you how to line those up. But you just need some simple tools. It's a socket set, 22 millimeter, 18 and a 19 millimeter flats. And that's all you'll need in order to remove this. First things first, lift up the front of the car and remove the front wheels. Then you remove this plastic under shield, which has 7 Phillips screws. You just turn them half a turn counterclockwise, and then the whole unit drops out. Next, you remove the engine sump cover here, and it has 4, I think 15 millimeter bolts across the front and 4 across the back. On the front ones, they're just protected by these rubber plugs. You just remove the plug, and then you can get to the 4 up front and then the 4 out back, and then the whole unit just drops out. This will give you a little bit more access to it. We're going to be removing the tie rods here, so we're just going to disconnect on the far end over here, and right by the hub, and then this part over here, you just pull back the boot and you can unscrew it over here. Do not loosen the adjustment here. You want to keep that because we want to keep the length of this exactly the same on the new unit that we put in. This will maintain your toe in, toe out, at least until you can get to the alignment shop. In other words, it'll be close. I know this is a bit hard to see, but you've got your tie rod end. It's an 18 millimeter. You take this off, and you also have access to this one here, which is the this is for the lower control arm to the bottom of the strut, and so you can loosen this one too. Since you're going to be replacing both, you can either use a pickle fork to undo them here, or, well, on this one you're going to have to because you don't have enough clearance, but here you can probably tap this one with a hammer. Alright, here's the tie rod removed. The clamp that's on the inner side, it's actually a pretty simple clamp. What it does is you get a screwdriver into this raised section right here, and you just twist it, and the whole thing will pop like that, and then you'll be able to get to the inner tie rod end here, and just undo that with a large crescent wrench. And then this is the old unit. It came out. So I'm going to open up this this clamp on this side here, just a little bit, so that it's so easy. But anyway, once we pop that, then we can move this a little bit closer like that, and this is your new unit here. This piece pops out, and then it pops back in so that you have an end on it, and this is what, you know, basically sits right here. So you want to pop off this end and then slide it on this way when you're ready to assemble. But I told you, let's see, about the overall length. So you want to make sure that you match up the overall length here and here, just so this edge here is the same, and where the bolt lines up for the hub side, the strut side actually lines up, so that they're both equivalent length. Then you slide this guy on here, and then when you're ready to assemble the clamps that they provide you, these are pretty simple. You just basically pull them tight. You fold this over, and then there's two ears here that you basically clamp down on this, and then that'll keep it in place. That'll keep it tight. And you do this with pulling with a pair of pliers. Alright, showing you the finished product here. They're essentially the same length, and what I had to do is I had to actually take this apart in order to get that kind of washer, rubber washer looking thing in there on. You have to actually take this apart and then slip it on and then put it back together. But it's actually a nice setup. You put your boot over it, you do the strap, and it's basically set. Now you just, you know, thread this on to the steering rack, and then put your clamp on the other side here on the steering rack body, and it's set to go. And so that's how you replace your tie rods. I'll show you that more towards the end. First, we have to remove the lower control arms. Alright, back to underneath the car. Once you have the tie rod off. You can see it. The hub arm is just sitting out there. You take off this 18mm here, separate that either with a pickle fork, or if you can get some sort of a punch down into this area, you can actually knock that out. And then there's two other points. There's this point here, and you're going to have to get that from above. There's a 18mm, I believe, nut up top, and what you'll need to do to get it loose from here is you'll have to tap on this here in order to have it just drop out. The final point is down here. This is your these are the two bolts right here for the control arm bushing, lower control arm bushing, and that has to come off. So once you have those 3 points off, this entire arm drops down, and then you can put up the new one, and I'll show you how to do that. So a little bit of a correction: the bolt, or the nut that's attached to this up on top, it's actually a 22mm, and the ones back here, they're 16mm. They're also 16mm for that the pan underneath the oil, for the oil pan guard. Those are 16mm too. I remember I mentioned 15mm before, but the 22mm I used was this kind of offset box-ended wrench, and it really works well, especially when you have the tie rod removed. That's a must in order to get the space. Alright, it was actually pretty simple to remove the A-arm, the lower control arm. You just tap this part right here for the center one. These just unbolt, but you tap this here and it just drops right out, especially if you have this end already disconnected. And this, I just kind of pounded it out with a sledge, and it just dropped right out. Notice the new one here. Okay, so the old one, you can see the joints are pretty much gone here, but here they're very, very tight. So this is how you want them to be. That's how they should be brand new. And this piece is important right here. It's clocked in a certain way. There's only one way to put this in, essentially. Again, you have the detents on this side, you don't on this side. So the detents are facing up here. So what you want to do is you want to either use soapy water or something like that, or a silicone-based spray, not a petroleum-based spray, because petroleum will tend to eat up that rubber. And then just force this on and get it to about where this one is. And it's not easy to do. You'll have to do it on a bench, kind of press down on it like this, but try to match it up to where this is, because when you reassemble this on, you want this to kind of line up with the detents on the frame, so that it guides right in, and then you can put the 16mm bolts through, and it just makes the job a lot easier. So when you're just replacing these, it's not as easy, because this is still on the car and you're trying to force this on by hand. But now that you have the whole thing off, you can actually do this off to the side on a bench. It'll make it a lot easier. Again, try to match the same position as the old one. Alright, I got it on there. You can see that it's on. So I used this silicone-based spray, sprayed up the unit pretty good. Put it on the edge here, have a carpet underneath and a newspaper on kind of a concrete step, and pushed it down, and then also just impacted it a couple of times here, and it went into position. Had to do it pretty hard, but anyway, this is a lot easier than doing it underneath the car. Just a note, when reassembling it underneath the car, when you put these guys on here, just assemble them loosely, and then do the end piece. Make sure those line up very, very well. You need some movement in these two in order to line that one up back there. So get these in first, but just again, loosely. Don't snug them down. Don't get them over the collar here where they tighten up, and then line up that one, get that one started, or at least in the detent area, and then go ahead and tighten these guys up. You'll probably need, they don't use cotter pins on these or anything like that, so you'll need somewhere in the range of about 30 foot-pounds or so. Should be fine. They're nylock, so once you get them over the shoulders on here, they're pretty much going to lock down, and then they're not going to really back off or anything like that, so you don't have to worry too much. Okay, a couple other notes on the lower control arm. On this side here, at the hub end, they have a 5mm hex stud that comes off of this, and you'll need that in order to tighten down the nut at the end. On this one here, I used the old nylock nut with a little bit of Loctite, because the nut that they give you as a replacement is one of these interference nuts, and those are hard to get to. It's very hard to get a 5mm hex up on top. So I just hit this with a hammer just once, and that seats the ball joint in the unit so it doesn't spin, and then I use the nylock up top, the old nut, with a little bit of Loctite in order to tighten that down. 35, maybe 40 foot-pounds here, and the two at the end. They give you a little bit of grease for the steering rack. If your steering rack is already greased, you can apply a little bit of it on there, and then go ahead and assemble on the tie rod end, and I'll do that right now. Alright, now the entire tie rod is on there, so you can see how I did the strap, the inner part as well as the outer part, or the midsection, and then you bolt up this end to the strut area, and you've got steering then. So the entire lower control arm plus the bushing has been replaced, and so has the steering tie rod, or on this end. So you do the same on the other side and take it to the alignment shop, and you should be good to go.